We'll open up the phone lines in the next segment if you want to line up. 800-859-0WJR, 800-859-0957. We'll open them up next segment. A lot of people talking about the Jeffrey Epstein files today. The House is going to vote this afternoon. Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson, was on the floor moments ago ahead of the vote. Talking about that, and for us to help us along in this conversation, we'll talk to Adrian Hemond, the CEO of Grassroots Midwest. Adrian, how are you? Thanks so much for the time.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
One of the things that I was talking about in the last segment, before we talk about the vote, is why in your opinion, do you believe we even need to open up these files? If you do or don't, I should get you on the record for that, first of all. But why wouldn't these women, many of them who put themselves out there in the PSA, just say who the people are that, violated them?
Well, I think the issue goes deeper than that at this point, right? This has been talked about for years. I think there is a broad public perception that people in government were involved with covering for this man, Jeffrey Epstein, in a sort of bipartisan fashion across multiple administrations, at various state levels of government. And I think a lot of politicians, again, on both sides of the aisle, have sort of stoked the public appetite to know what occurred here and, what various elected officials did that facilitated this man's ability to abuse people for as long as he did. And so I think that this issue will never go away until there is a complete accounting of what actually occurred. That's not going to be a speedy process, but step one is for the government to divulge what it has about the Jeffrey Epstein case.
I totally agree with you. Every word of it that you just said, I am on that page. And I do believe we as a country needs to see what scumbags are involved essentially in our government. Because, as you said, multiple administrations have seemingly believed to have covered up so much of what was going on. How do you think these individual lawmakers, how do you think this vote on this issue will stay with them? These lawmakers vote hundreds of votes a year on stuff. But this one in particular, the one that they will cast today, in the House anyway, how long do you think this particular vote will stick with them?
Well, I think that's actually a difficult question because I expect virtually all of the 435 members of the House of Representatives to vote for this resolution now. The president has signaled that he wants Republicans to support it, and that was really the holdup, right, in bringing this to the floor. It's why Speaker Johnson didn't bring it to the floor up until now, because the president didn't want him to. Now that the president has signaled that he supports the passage of this resolution, I expect virtually every Republican to vote for it, just like virtually every Democrat. So I do think anybody who votes against it is sort of playing with fire a little bit, but I don't expect that to be a large number at this point. That we're engaged in a signaling exercise now, and it's pretty clear which signal it's appropriate to send.
I think the hardest part to understand for a lot of people, me included, is how does somebody like this wield so much power over very powerful people? Jeffrey Epstein seems to have so much power over very powerful people that they felt the need to look the other way on these very, just beyond serious charges and convictions.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly an aspect of influence peddling or something like it that was going on here. But again, we don't know because the government has not divulged everything that the government knows up until this point about his sort of networks of influence. I think it's also very clear that there were a lot of very wealthy and well-known people who actively, sought out his company. We just saw another story the other day about former Harvard president Larry Summers, who a married man, by the way, who was trying to date a young subordinate or student at Harvard, who enlisted Jeffrey Epstein to help him figure out how to do it. So I think that there's a story about influence peddling, but there's also a story about people who knew this man's reputation and actively sought him out and his counsel.
Yeah, Larry Summers, former Harvard president, said he will take a step back from public life because of the text that suggests that he was Epstein's wingman, and suggested that women have a lower IQ than men. I think making the news over the last couple of days is the Washington Post expose as well, where this is crazy to me as well. During a 2019 hearing for Michael Cohen, the president's former attorney, Epstein appears to be texting with a lawmaker in real time who is questioning Cohen. How in the world does that happen, and how is that not plastered on every news organization in the world? That, to me, is evidence number one, of how much power this person had and how much protection he had in the government.
Yeah, these are all great questions, and it's part of the reason why I think it's so crucial for the government to just hike up its skirts and show everybody what they've got, right? Because at this point, no explanations are reasonably believed by people, because every time we peel back another layer of the onion, we find something else gross, right? And so at this point, the only move for the government is just to divulge everything that they have.
How much,
with appropriate sensitivities for the victims, but that's about it.
How much do you believe? Two-part question here. Number one, how much you talk about for the public to believe what the government has? How much of this do you believe? Because I was talking to a couple of my Democratic friends, and they said no matter what happens at this point, if Trump's not involved in these papers, in these files, they're not going to believe it because, quote unquote, and this is one of my friends that said this, they had time to scrub his name from it. We just don't believe anything anymore, do we?
Well, you're correct, but part of the antidote to that is the government being transparent, and then people outside the government being able to pick through the evidence and do their own investigations to figure out what's real and what's not and what's missing. Part of the consequence of allowing this to fester for so long and so many people covering for this man is that people are naturally quite suspicious and conspiratorial because there's so much evidence of conspiracy. The only way to dispel that is for the government to be fully transparent, and then for people outside the government to be able to go and investigate. Obviously, some of those investigations are going to be politically motivated from both sides, and that's fine as long as it's producing new information that's in the public interest to know. I think that that's appropriate. But step one is that the government has to divulge what they have.
Adrian, last thing for you. We live in a convict now society. What do you believe? Because one of the arguments that is made for keeping these files under lock and key is that there will probably be some names of associates that are revealed here that have had absolutely no wrongdoing whatsoever other than knowing or being associated with Jeffrey Epstein through business or not. I don't know if Katie Couric's name is in these files or not, but she was telling a story on a podcast within the last week saying that she had been to his house and she's embarrassed by it and it creeped her out and she wishes she would, all of these just random people that have had interactions with Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody's blaming Katie Couric of wrongdoing, but just these innocent names of people who will be exposed on this list. What do you make of that?
I think it's up to each individual American to decide on that question of innocence, right? Did you choose to associate with this man knowing some very greasy things about him? That's up to each individual to make that determination. It's certainly not up to the government.
No doubt about it. That's well said, my friend. Great stuff. Adrian Hemond, the CEO of Grassroots Midwest. Grassrootsmidwest.com is the website for more information. Adrian, thank you so much, my friend. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
You got it. We'll take your phone calls next at 800-859-0WJR, 800-859